Human rights groups say the refugee situation in South Sudan is worse now than before. A peace deal was signed a year ago between President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar. The refugees are fleeing to Uganda and causing a crisis in the country as well. Twice as many refugees have arrived in the past 6 weeks than in the first half of this year. The camp is overcrowded and there's an increased risk of disease. It's prompted a visit by the head of the UNHCR to the camp. TRT World's Zeina Awad is in Gulu, Uganda, and she joins us now live for more on South Sudan's refugees. Now, Zeina, tell us firstly more about how many refugees have been moving over the border into Uganda, and also about this visit from UNHCR Chief Filippo Grandi.
Well, Sally, Mr. Filippo Grandi will be the most senior UN figure to visit the border region between South Sudan and Uganda. And that really tells you how much the UN wants to shed light on the situation that's unfolding just an hour and a half from where we are at the moment. The UN says only in the last 10 days of July, the number of South Sudanese who've crossed over to Uganda has doubled. And most of them, over 80% of them, are women and children. And the UN and the government of Uganda are simply overstretched. They're just not able to handle so many people. They weren't expecting so many people to become refugees again from South Sudan. And we expect to hear from him now. He's supposed to be landing at 6:30 GMT and heading straight to the border regions, the refugee camps there. And we do expect to hear him appeal to the international community to do more to help to alleviate this crisis that's unfolding.
Uganda is one of the neighbouring countries that's been home and has offered refuge to these refugees since the conflict began. What is the impact now on the camps there in northern Uganda?
We've already heard that there have been cases of cholera outbreaks in the camps. This has come from the UN, and that shows us the overcrowdedness and the sanitation issues that we're facing. The UN has also said that it's had to half the rations that it's giving the refugees in this part of Uganda in order to accommodate more people coming in. Now, it's important to note that there have been refugees in this part of Uganda for a very long time, but this latest wave of South Sudanese was wholly unexpected, and people now are receiving less food because there are more people to go around. There are some public health issues, and the donations are just not coming to the UN to be able to help it cope with the situation.
And Zeina, it's been just a year since this very fragile peace agreement was signed after the country descended into conflict in 2013. Tell us more about why this conflict has again erupted and a bit about the rivalry between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir.
Yes, it's a rivalry that actually goes back to the days of the struggle when the South Sudanese, as we know them today, were fighting to change the political structure of the Sudan. And the rivalry between the two men has sort of colored, if you will, this history. Now, when the civil war broke out in December 2013, it lasted until really August 2015, and it was bloody and it was terrible for the people of South Sudan. It was a humanitarian crisis. But it took from August of last year until April of this year for Riek Machar to be able to come back to the country. And both leaders have said that they felt that their arms were twisted to sign this peace agreement, that there are a lot of unresolved issues between them and in the country. Well, less than 3 months later, Mr. Machar disappeared and he was replaced by his chief negotiator after a wave of violence hit South Sudan, the capital specifically, in July of this year. And fighting does go on in other parts of the country. The international community has called on both of them to really come back and try and work something out. The UN has even said that it wants to send 4,000 troops to maintain the peace in the city. So it's not looking good, and this will mean more refugees, more South Sudanese will become refugees. The UN says that at least 150,000 more are expected to come just to Uganda. So it just shows you the scale of the humanitarian crisis.
Certainly not good for the civilians there. Thanks very much for that, Zeina Awad in Gulu for us.